Welcome, everybody. With us today, we have Dr. Gary F. Gordon. He's recognized as a father of chelation therapy. Dr. Gordon is an expert on nutrition, mineral metabolism, and longevity. He serves as the medical director for Longevity Plus. Welcome, Dr. Gordon.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy life to join us. I have some very important information that I want to inform you about today. Last night, we did a webinar using the same content, the slides from Roadblocks to Recovery, that I had used when I spoke in Florida about 11 days ago. And the webinar from last night will have quite different content in terms of the points that I wish to establish from the slides. And so you will have the opportunity, should you choose to go back sometime to Gordon Research Institute and click on presentations, you will find September 30th, Fight for Your Health and Roadblocks to Recovery webinar will be up for you to hear a different presentation than I intend to give you today. I am focusing today on the different aspect. Yesterday I wanted you to understand from these slides that you truly can stamp out heart attacks, lower the incidence of cancer by over 95%, eliminate the problems of what we would call losing your mind, which includes everything from ADD to ADHD to Parkinson's to MS to Alzheimer's. We have an epidemic of these kinds of problems today, and I was giving the idea yesterday that what we need to look at is refocusing on what's really wrong rather than treating symptoms. For example, it's easy for a doctor to make his money in mainstream medicine by labeling everything depression and give a prescription for an antidepressant and never once look in the mouth, pay attention to mercury, pay any attention to what the person's eating. They can ignore all the obvious that the person works with chemicals every day. Because you see, if we were to really practice real medicine, we'd have to start getting down to what's really wrong with people. But there's the other side of the coin. I can give you from these slides the technical information that the products that I've helped bring to the world through Longevity Plus truly are life-changing. What do I mean? Well, if you go to the Longevity Plus website and you go down to children's formulas, and right next to E3MC, that is E3, that's to eat, exercise, and excel. And the MV is the multivitamin. Why do I bring it up? Because there is a multivitamin that is the most steady multivitamin for children in the history of the world. Nobody's ever had the kind of data we have. What am I telling you? We've been able to take a school in Leavenworth, Kansas, that we're going to close with the worst scholastic performing and the most violence. The police had to be there all the time, and in 2 years, it's the second best performing, and the police aren't there, and everybody's looking to go to college. So that's important to know, that when I talk to you about H.R.T, herbal remedy from Thailand, we have data. We have so much data that you're too busy to learn it. When I talk to you about E3MV, it is so obvious that we were able to stop these uncontrolled children's temper tantrums and their inability to learn because of the polyphenols and taurine, not what is on the main part of the label, because anybody look at the label and say, oh, it's just a multivitamin. Forget it. It's not a multivitamin. It is a total nutritional wafer that children get when they came to school and when they went home. So I'm trying to give you a hint at today is that we have to have you not only knowledgeable, that when I give you some knowledge about how BCI, Beyond Chelation Improved, stops most heart attacks because it works like heparin, it's nice for you to learn the technical part of it so that you believe it, because if you believe it, you may impart to the patient enough confidence that they may choose to spend their money and actually stay on the product. But what I want to bring out today is the other side of the coin. The patient has to be motivated, and they have to feel that what they're spending their money on when they stay on a supplement program, that it's relevant to what they are concerned about. So let's put this in simple knowledge. We now have a masterful new advanced form of an EKG that totally replaces treadmills and replaces angiograms, and in fact gives you almost the same information that a $2,500 PET scan would give you. And anybody can get it, and it's FDA approved. Medicare and private insurance pays $450 for it. Any doctor can have the machine, lease it for $1,000 a month, and now you have a patient that instead of thinking that maybe he has an obstruction in his coronary vessel, because by age 50, 80% of people have some obstructing disease in their coronary vessels. But now you have a real number. If your number happens to be 8, you're expected to have a serious heart attack within 6 months to a year. If your number is 0, as mine is, then it means you have totally regenerated your heart as I have done. So what is the value of this knowledge? It's great that you tune in and understand that we have knowledge today. Let's just go to the first slide, vitamin D. If I simply have you understand the vitamin D story fully by going to the actual information on the bottom of the slide, this will make you a world expert on vitamin D, and it will prove to you that everybody you see should spend money and take more vitamin D and or be exposed to more sun. It goes to every single disease that you want to talk about today, but unless the patient sees it as a value to them, they're not going to get the lowered incidence of diabetes and cancer and heart disease that they could get if they really were lucky enough to get this program. So what we have to do is understand that the vitamin D story is easy to document. We have to make it relevant to the patient, or they're not going to take the trouble to swallow the pill. And people all know that vitamin A is useless. That's what they think. But you read these slides, you'll understand that most people are suboptimal in vitamin A. It doesn't take more than 3, 4, 5 days to fill their tank. But when you learn that we stop children from dying by giving vitamin A, you'll learn that there's a lot to these stories. But if we talk about supplements today, are we talking vitamins or minerals or amino acids or fatty acids or mucopolysaccharides, or are you into the new substances, the small RNAs that we have found in the Quinton marine plasma that is helping people recover from chronic skin conditions and actually changing dramatically the health of people who have infections, because this gives the body some tools that it needs to work more efficiently. But you see, unless we're careful, if you give somebody beyond chelation improved, if people think it's a vitamin, they forget that it's an amino acid and a fatty acid, and that it has the mucopolysaccharide in it, and that it has all the trace minerals. They don't get the idea. And so it gets lumped into the category of vitamins, and people think vitamins are a waste of money. Now, we all know today that with various factors like pesticides, insecticides in our diet, and probably getting GMO foods, because it's almost impossible to eat soy or corn in our country without some GMO, that we're needing to give people a probiotic. But don't do it without feeding the probiotic if you want maximum benefit. And to get the maximum benefit, what we have to do is we have to wind up giving a really good prebiotic, and nothing will exceed stabilized rice bran with artichoke that we call Beyond Fiber. So if we go then and look at probiotics are important, but this is where I'm taking people. I'm taking people into the idea that we have got this epidemic of pollution, and it starts when the child is born. How are we going to defeat this? If you read everything, National Geographic tried to show that the pregnant woman is using the baby to get rid of her toxins, like her lead. It's the best way to get rid of the lead out of the mom is just dump it in the baby. So we've got to learn about zeolite, and we will make sure that you get from Longevity Plus the entire chapter about medical applications of zeolite from a $250 textbook, which anybody can find on Google. If you merely go to Handbook on Zeolite, you can read the chapter for yourself, the $250 textbook, but the 1,200 pages would make you a lot more interested in what the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, is where you go to become an expert at what this next slide is telling you. This slide is telling you that if you had wealthy patients and they didn't care what it cost, for 20 tubes of blood, you could send it to Mount Sinai and you would get 240 chemicals, and you would find in everybody you test at least 30 to 40 neurotoxins 30 to 40 carcinogens, and about 40 endocrine disruptors, the PCBs and the dioxins and the polybrominated diphenyl ethers, and the list goes on and on today with phthalates and bisphenol A. When you understand these, you'll understand why I want you to go to the slide at the bottom and see, so at least you talk knowledgeably. If you have one or two of your patients of your entire practice that do the test, then you can know that everybody from Bill Moyer on television, who's been trying to live organically ever since he took Nixon to China, that nobody is able to avoid breathing on our planet. When you breathe, you're getting toxins, and you sometimes eat something and you're getting toxins. So by having, if we put the horse in front of the cart, we will talk to people about what's really wrong with them, not just giving them another pill that gives them more poison. This is a joke. It has the baby shark asking Mom, why aren't we supposed to eat humans anymore? Mom says they're so toxic, you don't want to touch them, and mentions the mercury in the mouth. But there's so many chemicals in our bodies today, but we don't have people getting accurate information. Now, here, for example, the Time magazine, the entire issue, I found one useful quote in the issue. The rest of it was shoving vaccines down people's throats without even understanding the benefit, which is small, and the risk, which is large. But one quote in here was useful. When you're Dr. Katz, the director of research on prevention at Yale, you can tell the truth, and the truth is, tell the public, learn more from the internet, go to meetings, talk to doctors of alternatives, because you can't assume any doctor knows everything he or she should know, particularly when we talk about invisible killers. Because who is going to talk about these toxins if they don't have something that makes it easy for the patient to get rid of these problems? Then people are just going to ignore it, and they'll say, you're just depressed, you need a vacation, and they don't really get down to dealing with the problem. Now, Dr. Stuart Lonke wound up doing research with Wyora, a multi-level company that sells a liquid form of zeolite. He told me that we wouldn't have to bother to use intravenous DMPS to get mercury out of people, and I was very skeptical because I've read every paper for 30 years, and I've written a whole book on oral detoxification with oral chelation. But I did take the time, and I spent a couple of years and a lot of money, and I'm saving you all this money and time because I've put up a website called zeoliteanswer.com because I found 2,500 patents alone. 3 million tons are sold a year of zeolite around the world. Only 2% of it is sold in the United States, so there's not too many people you can talk to who know what I now know. But it's our job to get the information in your hands. So make sure you talk to Longevity Plus and say, I need that chapter, because you can, I repeat, Google will make that last chapter of the 1,100 pages free to you, starting at page 1141, if you just pull up the book that you want to see, Handbook on Zeolite. Or you can ask Longevity Plus to get the copy. So I go to the bookstore and I see my book, Detox with Oral Chelation, right next to the omega-3, and I'm happy to have it there. But next to it is a book by Dr. Younger, Junjer, and it's called Clean. And I like his concept because you and I see patients that we can't quite get the compliance we need, and he finds that when he sends them to a spa for a week or two where they get a couple of massages, maybe a couple of colonics, they get to eat some really organic, well-prepared food that is not things that we're sensitive to, because when you get into where I'm taking all this, you've got to do a few miracles in your practice to get really excited. We have a gentleman, RG, 47 years of age, 20 plus years of having MS. He saw the best doctors, Beth Israel, he went everybody, and this guy at the end of 20 years with the best that medicine can offer him, he has gone downhill, downhill. Finally, he's in a walker, then he's on crutches, and then he's in the wheelchair. And then they finally say, it's time, we have to throw in the towel. We have nothing more to offer you. You can do this. I have never failed with an MS patient in 20 years, and we have given you tools today that absolutely work even better. I don't lose patients from heart attacks, and MS is so easy to treat, and so is prostate cancer. And I cover all this with the FACT forum, and I try to put this so that you can search. So I contribute an hour or two a day, every day of my life for 5 years to F.I.G.H.T to give you a free medical school in the sky of advanced medicine. So if you put in the word autism, when you use your password that Longevity Plus will give you, you can have everything that ever been said by myself and the other 2,000 health professionals. So somebody will add something about Oriental medicine, which I failed to now be very knowledgeable about, and somebody will bring up acupuncture. So we try to give you everything. But what happened to Mr. R.G.? Desperately, he finally went to see an alternative doc, Dr. William Heidelman, an ACAM doctor. He, not having that much experience, just said, well, let's at least give you some good nutrition for a while. So he got him, hired himself a nurse, and a couple times a week, he took a lot of what we would call Myers cocktails and nutritional IVs. And it at least stopped going downhill. But he still didn't see a big bang for the buck. And then he told Dr. Edelman again, and Dr. Edelman said, well, Dr. Gordon was at ACAM, and he told me that he has a zeolite that's changing the world. He says, you might as well try it. So he goes on 3 products from Longevity Plus: Zeo Gold, Bioenergy C, and Beyond Chelation. Technically, he should have been on quite a few other things like the ACS, because if you have MS, you have an elevated pathogen burden. It doesn't have to be just the virus of human herpes virus 6. It can be anything from candida to you name it, but ACS silver would have helped with the pathogen load. But he, with these 3 products, in less than 3 months, is driving the car back to full activity and considers it a miracle. So what's the miracle? The miracle is we have an epidemic of autoimmune diseases. There's over 100 of these diseases. And here, this book, if you buy it, is endorsed by the director of autoimmune research at Johns Hopkins and the director at NIH. And if you buy the book, you will learn that what I took out of this book, I made into a very simple thing. And by the way, it mentions in this book how dangerous vaccines are. By the way, I took the book and I just said, in order to understand the chapters in the book, because one guy got well when he simply stopped eating the food he was allergic to, and the next guy got well when he got rid of the toxins. So I just call it F.I.G.H.T. Now, of course, if we had total perfect intuition, we'd know when the patient came to us which food they need to stop eating, which nutrient they were most deficient on. Was it the magnesium or the D? Or did they need the selenium more? Did they need the fatty acid? Or will they need some acetylmethionine for a while? Do they need some St. John wort? Or is it the heavy metals? Is there in their body enough heavy metals that it's the main problem in their body? Because everybody wants to be cost effective. My job is to make you more than cost effective. My job is to make you fail safe. I can't have failures. Because as long as you protect yourself, you tell the patient, okay, you've seen 50 doctors, nobody's helped you, and you have this weird diagnosis, whatever they want to call it. They can call it cancer. I don't care what they call it. You can know that they're going to have heavy metals. Why? Well, when you go through the rest of the slides, you'll find there isn't a human being on the planet that doesn't have 1,000 times too much lead in their bones, and it's proven at Harvard, published in JAMA. The level of lead in your bone decides how soon you go blind, because it doesn't just stay in your bone. And you're born with 1,000 times too much lead, so this is a no-brainer. But if you're going to look at F.I.G.H.T, the toxins, no one will pass the test at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. So go to ewg.org and learn what the test is so you can talk knowledgeably and protect yourself, because without knowledge, your patient isn't about to get in a far infrared sauna and spend 8 hours a day for 1 to 2 months, which is what we do in the Hubbard therapy, when we have proof that the patient used to know his family and could speak clearly, and after one exposure, when he did a raid on some angel dust, he is no longer able to even know his last name. You know that you've got to get the toxins out. So sometimes you have a pretty good idea, but if the toxins were there, he would still have a likelihood of too much lead and a likelihood of some infection, because if we are all a little bit toxic today, we don't have the ideal flora in our intestine, we get sensitive to food. So there's a reason for all this. If we look at what the simple concept is, I just give you a few hints. F for food, I for infection, G for genetics, H for heavy metals, T for toxins. I explained this in greater length in the presentation last night, and so I'm going to have you think about going to Gordon Research and listening to the presentation from last night, because there's some newer things that I want to kind of touch on today. But this is the crux of the matter. If your patient doesn't believe you, because remember, they've already, many of your patients have seen 10 or 20 doctors. And remember, they walk in, they think it's Lyme, and if the Lyme test isn't positive, then they're lost. They don't know what to do. Forget Borrelia. Talk to people about infections. Become knowledgeable. There's all the textbooks in these slides as you go through them that you can read that prove to everybody has some, either Coxsackie or chlamydia or cytomegalic virus or one of the mycoplasma incognito or some of the candida. We have infections. Now, not everybody can afford the ultimate treatment would be ultraviolet blood with ozone, which I'll be teaching at ACAM on November 5th, an entire day on oxidative medicine. But a single treatment, even 100 grams of vitamin C, which will lower your titer to hepatitis and all the other AIDS, etc., if you don't stay on the oral vitamin C and stay on the silver and learn how to keep the immune system up, you haven't really got the bang for the buck. The patient, provably, you can lower the titer to anything with aggressive use of what I listed here, but you've got to keep them on low-dose silver, and you've got to keep them on enough vitamin C for the rest of their life, or they will revert back to being sick again, and you've lost the chance of changing somebody's life. And I'm so passionate about this because yesterday, driving, I happened to listen to National Public Radio. And I heard a gentleman by the name of Avery Levin, director of the Rocky Mountain Institute. If you hear this man, you would know this man has the knowledge and the answers to solving the world's energy problems, and no one would ever be dependent on oil again. He would change the lives of everybody. Why do I make a big deal out of it? Because the day before, I went to a meeting about the healthcare crisis, and our local in Arizona representative to Congress for the last 12 years, Representative John Shattuck, is extremely knowledgeable about healthcare. And I'm bringing up names of people to have you think what I'm so upset about. I know how to keep John from Representative John Shattuck alive, and he has fallen into the hands of the mainstream who've already given him a bypass, and then not too long after that gave him a pacemaker, and he's getting nothing that he really needs, and he's being lied to because they pretend that they know whether they've helped him or not, when the truth is, I used to be in radiology, and I know what a complete farce the angiogram can be, but I now know that all you have to do is write down the name of PremierHeart.com. PremierHeart.com will allow anybody to lease for $1,000 a month, buy for $35,000, or find a cardiologist and have them get into this, because since it is now shown to be as accurate as angiograms, we suddenly can actually keep people like these really lovely people I'm talking about. Avery Levin, if he dies from a stupid heart attack, and I haven't had anybody on my program die of a heart attack in 20 years, I will feel very guilty. But I can't just walk up to a guy and say, hey, I'll give you my product. Here, take the BCI, and because you may have had a history already of a clot or something, I may add the Beluki or the endokinase. The problem is, if the patient doesn't know where I'm coming from and doesn't understand it, we're not going to help him no matter how many. I've spent millions learning all this stuff. I took my heart from a complete mess at age 29, unable to go fly the stairs, and I can now ride my bike straight up the mountain. So I can't help people unless they know what the extent of their problem is, and part of the skill, the art of medicine, is for you to not only learn that we have answers, because I can assure you that with this new sensitive PremierHeart.com test, if the person doesn't get a 0, and most are not going to have a 0, 80% are going to fail at age 50, but whatever number they have, we can change it. We can bring it back to the 0 that I've got. They may spend some money, but they know why they're spending it, and they have a before and after, and it gives them compliance. So our problem is for you to learn all this stuff, to know it passionately, and know why. How did I stop heart attacks? It's because we spent $10 million in the 60s with Lester Morrison. We have 3 textbooks about how we found in the ocean a carrageenan-like material that works in the body like heparin, and when I added the EDTA to it, it made it work at a realistic dose, because before that you had to take about a whole cupful of material that tasted like you were getting Metamucil without any sugar. So we've made it so we can do it, but it's half the equation for you to be smart enough to know how to keep these people alive if they're your patients. But it doesn't work unless they believe that you are treating them for something that's real. So let's look at a screening test that everyone could be using in their practice. It's a new test. It's the BioClip. I will cover these things in great detail with fact. So I'm only hoping to get you to join F.I.G.H.T. Go to GordonResearch.com, and it says join F.I.G.H.T. Tell us who you are, and we give you a password. But it doesn't help unless you learn how to use it. Because I want you to know that I've written passionately about MS and Alzheimer's and prostate cancer and breast and how to use the different, but unless you know that you, because I honestly have very bright doctors who belong to F.I.G.H.T. and when they get their prostate cancer, they want me to call them. They won't even take the time to go to F.I.G.H.T. and put in the word prostate cancer and see what I've passionately written, because I don't lose people with prostate cancer. But everything is compliance. So compliance, how do you keep everybody alive? Well, you see on my website, Gordon Research, you put in the word cancer, and you can immediately see that Dr. Kobayashi, a MD, PhD, molecular biologist, oncologist, pathologist, friend of mine in Tokyo, who was funded by a church and followed 10,000 patients 12 years and eliminated virtually all cancers because he gave people a blood test, just a panel of sophisticated tumor markers. And if your tumor marker, the whole panel of the $500 test didn't look good, the Japanese were pretty compliant. And they said, well, Doc, if you think I'm going to get cancer one of these days, it's going to be the lump bump stage, which is 7 years that you had these tests were abnormal before the lump bump. They said, well, what do you want me to do, Doc? And so the same program that I'm talking about right in front of you, go to my website, put in the word Kobayashi or put in the word cancer and read how did we eliminate cancer in 10,000 people for 12 years. All we had to do is what you all, I know, lower the stress, simplify the diet, and do the detoxification, use some farm for red sauna when needed, and use immune support. I have put together Immunity 2 and Immunity 3. 2 is for the infection, Immunity 3 is for the chronic problems like cancer, and I have put everything in this product, but it doesn't help if the patient takes it for a day, and they've been walking around and fail even the American test for cancer, which you go to caprofile.net. Cancerprofile.net is going to cost them $380 just for the cancer part, or about $1,000 if they do the cancer and anti-aging. I prefer they do the anti-aging and cancer because you'll know what their estrogen and testosterone and DHEA is and their ferritin. You'll know a lot of stuff and you'll be able to treat people intelligently. I could tell anybody pretty much that the program that is eliminating heart attacks in anybody I have dealt with, as well as strokes, that would be BCI, and when indicated, either Buluki and endokinase. But that's just enough to avoid the death. If you're not going to have the heart attack, it means you're going to probably live to 80 or 90, so then we better talk about anti-aging, which means you've got to keep the calcium in the bones, so you have to be on Beyond Bone. If you're a woman, you have to be on the HRT. The herbal remedy from Thailand is the most sophisticated selective estrogen receptor modulator of the beta receptor that ever existed. And if you go to northern Thailand, you would go broke because nobody's getting broken bones, and they're not getting Alzheimer's, and they're not getting breast cancer. The World Health Organization found it to be the lowest incidence of breast cancer, which is why we went and studied it for 10 years and took 10 years to make it into a reproducible biological material that comes from Pararia mirifica, part of a kudzu family, but nobody standardized it and did the studies to find that it stops the proliferation of all breast cancer cell lines. It's part of the treatment of breast cancer. So instead of women being told, oh, I'm afraid you can't take Permin because you've had this or you've had that, and yet even if you read up on even bioidentical hormone therapy, it's not 100% safe. They still have the possibility, based on genetics, of pushing you toward heart disease or toward cancer, unless you use Pararia mirifica, which we've standardized, made available with a great deal of effort and a lot of money. It's a 10-year program working with MD PhDs in Thailand who are trained at places like Johns Hopkins. This is real medicine. We've shown this work to SmithKline Glasgow. Their director said, my God, they've earned $200 million a year for over 10 years selling just a few little things along the things that we all believe in, a little soy here, a little of the black coash, there's even the green tea. We love red clover. We love all of these things. But as they point out, even if you use DIM and I3C, by the way, DIM and I3C, I love them. The broccoli is great, but a lot of people won't eat it. But take maca. That's part of my power drink. Maca is going to give you a glucosinolate that will work just like your broccoli, but gives you much more for the buck. course, it does come from the turnip family. So when I give you a power drink, which has in it our all organic green, and has in it the Beyond Fiber, which is the key step to making your acidophilus work effectively. And my position is that because of pesticides in genetically modified food, everybody needs some acidophilus every day of life to get the most effect from our other nutrients. And if you're going to take an acidophilus, which you can select what you believe is the best, please give it the stabilized rice brand, which has the beta-cytosterol, octacosanol, gamma-rhizinol, and all of the B vitamins. When you read what is in Beyond Fiber, there is no product that you could find because we added the artichoke to it to give a perfect balance of what we call soluble fiber to insoluble. So this is a really well-designed product, and it all ties together to deal with the toxins, because once I make you knowledgeable about any form of chelation, let's say you became a world expert on DMSA. We do sell the heavy detox, and I love dimethylsuccinic acid, and I have nothing against oral use of DMPS, but I prefer the least toxic, most affordable, because I look at this process of detoxification as a lifetime program, because bones take 15 years to remodel. Therefore, unless you stay on what I've get you on for at least 15 years, if you only take my product for 7 years, you've only gone from having 1,000 times too much lead in your bones to merely having 500 times too much lead in your bones. So I don't think that that's really solved everything we want to solve. So what I'm getting across to you is that you can learn all this stuff technically so that you have the passion and the knowledge for the person to hear it, but you have to give them tricks that they will follow. And in the right-hand corner, you see a little thing that says F.I.G.H.T. Why have I got that in the corner? Because a lot of people are never going to understand F.I.G.H.T. I've just given the tip of the iceberg of it, but across everything, high doses of C will lower the body burden of most kinds of infections and have proven to deal with many of the toxins, and it even deals with many of the heavy metals. So if you get the new book, Curing the Incurable by Tom Levy, you will want to be able to make people, because most people will take vitamin C. About 70% of people believe that Linus Pauling was onto something, and they're willing to take C, but they never knew how to take it as a tool. But with this F.I.G.H.T, you just dip it in the urine for a second and watch for the color change. If it stays green, the patient in your office has scurvy, and whatever else you're doing isn't going to work. But if they get this and they have the maximum benefit that vitamin C can give you, they're going to have 100 milligram, which is the yellow color on the strip of the pen, and that means that they have high blood levels of C, so they're getting the optimal benefits that C can deliver. Then the problem is merely to stay on it for the rest of your life. Like Linus Pauling said, you didn't take the vitamin C for 6 months or a year, you ate it up for life, and you never took less than 10 to 12 grams, and we had to solve the irritation factor to make it stomach friendly, and we had to add to it the trimethylglycine, methylsulfonaphane, and ribose as part of the trick to understand that your patients have these toxins. So if you go back to the first test and you use Mount Sinai School of Medicine and you do the $4,900 test, they're going to be toxic. But you can't get the toxins out unless you deal with the problem of defective methylation. And how did we foul our methylation? It turns out, if you watch these slides, which we're going to go through a little more rapidly now so you'll see how it all fits together, we get exposed to phthalates and bisphenol A from the plastic that our food is wrapped in and our water is delivered in. And this changes permanently your genes so that you no longer methylate effectively, and methylation is the key step in stopping aging and in effective detoxification. So methylation is what? We have you on Beyond B12 or HRT, which has Beyond B12, and that gives you 3 forms of folic acid, including 5'-methyltetrahydrofolate and folinic acid and the methylcobalamin. And then we give you in the vitamin C, the MSM, and the trimethylglycine, and we simply have 1 teaspoon, slightly heaping 3 times a day, every 8 hours. People will stay in the yellow test, and all the cancer clinics use this product because the patients stay alive. So this is just keep the color in the yellow color. This is a very simple idea. We know that everybody says, gee, do I need to get the heavy metals out? The answer is yes. Everybody wants to be undetectable level of lead and mercury, and it's concentrated in your body, and depending on what your lead level is, this depends how soon you die of some disease. tied to every cause of disease. This is the proof that the lead in your bone is in equilibrium with your brain. And we have all these people today. They just did the National Football League did a big survey to find out how head trauma relates to the epidemic of dementia. And they find that anybody who was active in boxing or football has a minimum of 6 times the incidence of dementia. And some of them are 19 times more dementia. Can you tie this into my F.I.G.H.T? Would you know what to do? If you bang your head, it's reasonable that you'll have a little bit of bleeding or a torn capillary, and it'll release a little bit of red blood cells into the brain tissue where iron will be then released. And iron and copper are able to cause an excess of free radicals because they catalyze free radicals. So what can you do? Please understand that I spent millions of dollars going to all these meetings, and I try to put it all into F.I.G.H.T and learn. In wobenzyme, it is not so much the enzyme as the rutin and the quercetin, and the rutin is an iron chelator, so the rutosid is what you do. And if it's your kid and he insists on playing football, please learn that the top teams in Russia, Germany, and Austria all take at least 10 to 15 wobenzyme, 5 tablets 3 times a day before meals, and if they get hit, another 30 that day. They'll get a tiny little bit of gas, but you will tie up the iron that got released when they banged their head, and they won't have to have the epidemic. But let's look at stopping all dementia. Mark Hyman put out a great thing this week, and it was, are you losing your mind? Great way to look at it. Mark is really the head of functional medicine. I love the guy, trained at Harvard. His book, The Ultra-Term Mind Solution, is great. He and I are on the same page. It's almost identical. I just simplified it. I call mine F.I.G.H.T. And I actually have more than one F because it's not just the food supplement you need. Into a different diet. And you need to have focus, because if the patient's negative, if they don't have any focus on getting well, you don't have much help. And with the H, there's 2 H's, the heavy metals, which everybody needs to be every day on at least 0 gold, because everybody alive today has detectable levels of lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, etc., uranium, and just do the hair. If you do a hair test and you repeat it every 6 months, your goal is to get it as low as possible. Do the blood, because the blood is also going to correlate perfectly. Methyl mercury is found in the blood and the hair. It's not in the urine. So if you do the wrong test, you haven't got the patient on your side. Look at this case. This is a mother of an autistic kid. And a really good, well-trained doctor who should know better told her, mercury's not in your kid. That is a stupid thing to say, because the kid comes to me and I get mercury off the chart. What was the difference? Well, a couple of details. I know that metals are kept in your body by inflammation, and inflammation will increase things like metallothionein, which is a natural chelator, so it holds it locked in the kid's brain. So I had to turn off the inflammation. Now, when you and I had medical school, we thought that inflammation sometimes had something to do with infection. And today, if you read any of the books that I have on these slides, and you go to Plague Time or go to the Institute of Medicine report on infections, you'll learn that everybody has these infections, but since you don't have any drug that will deal with the Coxsackie, chlamydia, mycoplasmas, etc., you have to learn how to use silver. And if you know, most people are, I have really great friends of mine tell everybody silver is a ripoff, it's never going to do it. I mean, I have nonsense being told today. In the lecture that I will present at ACAM, the slides for my ACAM presentation will be available sometime after ACAM. But I've covered everything you need to know to show anything you want to know about silver. I have the data. In any event, going back to the heavy metals, if you're born with too much lead, then how much mercury do you have to get toxic, since lead makes mercury 100 times more toxic? And this is the Institute of Medicine trying to teach everybody there is every infection, but you have to waste $5,000 of the money trying to chase every form of Borrelia and chase down everything on Coxsackie. Why waste the money? The patient just wants to feel better. Show them a slide that says you had an infection, it was in your lungs, and it later wound up in your plaque. This is what really happens. This is no-brainer. And Plague Time is a book by head of theoretical medicine at Amherst, and he's trying to tell you that depending on your genes and whether or not you smoke and whether how much of chlamydia and pneumonia, which we find in 70 to 80% of all people, then it will decide whether or not you can have cancers or other things. So CMV is that everybody. Lyme, change the name from Lyme to Lyme's, Limes. That would be lowered immune metabolic encephalopathy syndrome or arthropathy syndrome or myopathy. Why do I make this a big deal? I don't want patients spending all that money having some doctor saying, oh, well, I don't agree, this is not Lyme, it wasn't the right criteria. Waste the money, forget it, get the patient well. Lower the total body burden of all pathogens. They're in everybody. And if you don't understand this, this is an easy site where people are talking, who are patients, they're sharing it. So if you don't join my F.A.G.H.T to talk doctor to doctor, join this website and you'll be talking patient to patient where you can share information and see how people, yeah, we go through detoxification when you take enough of the zeolite. I have, for 3 months, I had to scrub the toilet after every bowel movement, and there was a lot of bowel movements for the first couple of months, and things came out that were black and not nice. Because we all need a lot more detoxification. A couple of clinics a year would be neat, some massage would be neat, ultraviolet, but across the board, who's going to use that fire infrared sauna? Nobody will do these things unless they know they're in trouble. That's the nice thing about the new heart test and or the cancer test I mentioned to you. So the mouth is a bad place, so I have people hold the silver in the mouth once in the morning and once at night, maybe 5, 10 sprays. That would be a minimum every day to keep some pathogens loaded down. But when you take the silver, which is the right-hand bottle, ACS 200, it's said to take an ounce to load the body so you get some benefit. And if you have anybody that's going to be one of the 100,000 dying this year of antibiotic-resistant infections, please have ACS 200 in your home, 4-ounce bottles, and be generous and keep your friends and loved ones or patients alive. But here in the left-hand corner, we have a gold bottle of ACZ. Now, that's a different kind of zeolite. So Longevity Plus is so excited about zeolite that we have it as a spray, which we've seen people using these two sprays, the silver and the zeolite, and spraying it over the eyes and taking it orally. We've seen a patient that was blind have the blindness go away and all kinds of skin rashes go away. And if you add quinton marine plasma as a spray, you're really making the skin well. But the gold ACZ is convenient for babies because I'm of the position that the mother should be on zeolite during the pregnancy, but most women will never have heard about it. But they all are going to be interested since they're learning that their baby is loaded. The EPA says 600,000 children are born with mercury toxicity, and if you and I use our figures, every child is born with lead and mercury because there's no safe level. So having it in a convenient spray is great. But the whole bottle is only 100 milligrams. When you go to Zeo Gold, we then give you 100 milligrams in a special pre-measured dosage unit that you open the capsule and put it in fluid, 2 to 4 ounces of good water before you consume it. So we do that to protect the public because some people are going to sell sand and claim that it's zeolite. And this is a colloidal, so it's a micronized hydrocolloidal zeolite that we're talking about. But I needed to have you aware that we can't get too much zeolite. We have people in Europe using the European material from Croatia, which is where Dr. Pasovic is the contributor to the medical applications of zeolite chapter, the 40 pages at the end of the handbook on zeolite that I urge you to either go to Google and put in handbook and read the chapter free of charge, or ask Longevity Plus for your copy. But the point is that if you learn all the things about zeolite, you'll see that in Europe, they have some people with advanced colon and pancreatic cancer taking a teaspoon every hour of zeolite because, why? Think about it. First of all, would you agree your body's about 70% water? Would you also agree that your intestine has the gut-associated lymphoid tissue and the Peyer's patches, and do you think they work efficiently if there's a mess of carcinogens and mutagens in your intestine, which there is in everybody? You can prove that. Read about the Ames test on fecal streams. Everybody fails. They have mutagens and carcinogens in everybody's bowel stream. So please, at least take oral EDT every day of your life and some garlic. The simple thing I did with BCI, remember, I haven't had a patient die of a heart attack in 20 years or a stroke, so we did something pretty meaningful with our $10 million that we spent. with Lester Morrison in the 60s with his that you could ever imagine. But now we're going beyond that because people are so resistant to chelation, then the doctors will tell them oral chelation won't work, and there's all the confusion. Now we have zeolite and silver. And Daryl Tichy, the guy in the blue coat, spent 30 years working on understanding silver. So don't tell somebody that they're all alike, because if they're all alike, why does one work 200 times faster in its killing ability of Staph aureus or its killing ability of the Candida? Please look at the facts and don't be confused. There are products that really work, but I take so
I'm sorry, we appear to be having some technical difficulty. Please hold with us for one moment, please.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Web Events Made Easy. Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an organizer and may now speak to any other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast.
we have all these toxins. Hover tank therapy is a little bit invasive. People don't like to spend 8 hours a day sweating and then get out and cool off and wash off and get back in and take high doses of niacin and all the tricks. But please understand that bisphenol A is in everybody, and we've now proven beyond any shadow of a doubt that it is causing health problems. And so if we look at
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Web Events Made Easy. Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an organizer and may now speak to any other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast.
used to have, we now have proof at the AIMS.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
We're back on. Randy Girdle at Duke is the guy that proved how dangerous all these things are. And Renee Jasper is at the Ames Research Laboratory, University of California in Berkeley. And she has documented that using methylation support nutrients, which can include 5'-methyl tetrahydrofolate as well as methylcobalamin, MSM, trimethylglycine. I teach this all the time, in fact, but you use these and you can cause the problem. The problem we see is that in the mice that were exposed to BPA, just the amount that a baby would get if somebody warms the baby's food in a microwave, that little amount permanently changed all the mice so they became obese, yellow, and diabetic. But with the right nutrients, methylation support, we can convert them back. On another time, you'll learn all the problems about vaccines. I've covered that greatly on our program. But zeolite, what is it? It's a natural volcanic mineral with a unique complex crystalline structure It's formed over millions of years, and it's a honeycomb framework that allows it now to truly be the ultimate filter system of the world. We couldn't go to the moon or go into outer space without zeolite, because it has these little traps, and it will trap, and we can filter and recirculate the air for a year or two, or all the water on the ship. And so this is a very big story. The zeolite is from volcano. Here's Sloan Kettering's own sheet, and NASA has their own sheet. So zeolite, if somebody tells you it's all nonsense, you have to know that they don't know what they're talking about. Here's the Sloan Kettering site. Go to NASA and put in the word zeolite. But it's treatment of diarrhea, anti-cancer, antioxidant, immune enhancement, hangover cure. Mechanism of action, ion exchanging absorption. It is not exactly like our chelators, so I still personally take heavy detox and my BCI, because I know that it takes forever for me to get to 0 levels of lead and mercury. But zeolite is my easiest answer for the people, because it hits the aflatoxin. It does things that way beyond chelating agents. And with animals, we know that incredible things, all-cause of morbidity and mortality, drop dramatically, and animals get better lean body weight gain for every pound of food you feed them. How come? Because there's no more ammonia smell around the farm. Why is that? Because now they're using the nitrogen in building lean body, healthy tissue. And it's very exciting because it gets rid of biofilm. This is some more stuff about zeolite. In agriculture, we know that zeolite will handle mercury. So anybody telling you they have to have IV DMPS for your child, they don't have the picture. I use zeolite on the horses. The horse on the left didn't get any zeolite. The horse on the right gets a lot of zeolite. We all know in our body that we have free radicals. We all know that vitamin C never really was proven to be as big a bag as we thought it was, because we used too little. When you read the book, Curing the Incurable, you will know why it's so important to have that stick and to check the vitamin C level and keep people at the optimal level. But let's look at the other side of it. Vitamin C is going to act as an antioxidant, and then it'll become an oxidant, a dehydroascorbic acid, so it switches back and forth. Now, what if you gave the vitamin C with the zeolite at the same time, so you would tie up? Remember, zeolite has these little cages, and permanently it has a charge, and things like lead and mercury and cadmium and arsenic go in the little cage, and they stay in the cage, and they're gone. And then when you have a bowel movement, they go out. This is a good deal. But meanwhile, your whole body is loaded with water that has lots of toxins. We all know there's any clean water left on the planet, so certainly you don't have in your body. That's why Gabriel Cousin loves the zeolite, and he's using the multi-level product, the Wyora. And Sloan Kettering has more things about clinoptilolite, which is what most of the zeolite research everybody's talked about is based on. We've been very fortunate in that the zeogold is a micronized hydrocolloidal zeolite that actually has 20 times the surface area and a stronger magnetic charge, as I'll show you in a minute. So zeolites are ion exchanging, and so you see, you can feel better. This is confusing to people. If you go to a doctor and you take, say, 30 IV chelations over, say, a couple of months, and you say, my doc, I can run up the stairs, I'm great. Stop the chelation, and you'll go right back to being sick, because you haven't dealt with the deeper level. You've got the readily accessible heavy metals. With zeolite, you are going to neutralize, but you can continue taking it for the rest of your life, so you don't have the rebound phenomena that the patient dies 2 years after you thought you treated him, but because you didn't know how to go to Premier Heart and get the right test. He still had blockages in his arteries, but he felt so much better, he thought he was Superman, and he wasn't. So that's the nice thing about using the kind of tests I teach you about. So zeolite can be a sponge. They're absorbing the free radicals. They tie up viral particles, and they're going to detox a lot of the carcinogens. So Wyora is a heavy metal chelating treatment that they are selling multi-level around the world to deal with these toxins. They've spent a lot of time and money to try to make people understand that you don't rob the body of magnesium, calcium, potassium, because the ions don't fit the little cages. But you do rob the body of the mercury and the lead and the cadmium and arsenic, and the body doesn't seem to mind getting rid of those things. So its size, it's called the van der Waals radii of metals, and you can clearly see that lead, mercury, and arsenic are down in a smaller size, and that's why these cages fit better. So do we prove the stuff comes out? Yes, using stuff. Can you even deal with dichlorobenzene? Now let me tell you about benzene. We just had 3 nights ago a special on CNN about 7 top Marines, all with advanced breast cancer in men. In men, metastasizing, threatening their lives. These guys were all 30 years ago at the same Marine base in Virginia. But the research proves that the water that they were exposed to, and they cooked their food and they bathed and they drank food, was loaded with dichlorobenzene. And if these poor guys had had this 30 years ago, but think what this is telling you. Of course, the government's not going to pay them for any of their stuff, and they're going to say 7 cases out of 10 doesn't mean anything to us. But you and I have to think. If there's a 30-year time lag, maybe women with breast cancer are stuck with the same thing and nobody's treating the cause. So the zeolite is a huge story. And it's a breakthrough because, you know, IV DMPS is not friendly, it's expensive, and some people don't feel very good when they did it. So you feel guilty if you don't do it because it's strong. But if it's not the right answer, if you really learn that no treatment that you could possibly do is going to get all the lead and mercury out of it, 1, 5, 10, or 50 IVs, you're not going to get it all. So let's lay out a program that they can do over life, but you feel better within the first couple of weeks because you neutralize the stuff. It's not gone, and if you stop the treatment, the symptoms go, but you feel so much better. Within 2 months, I could ride my bike up a mountain because I had changed. So these little holes are real, and here's the facts. The current Zeo Gold has a surface area on the right, says 450 meters. There's never been a product available for human consumption, GRAS, ever before that does what this is doing. Everything else is 24.5, which is why some people will say, oh, I tried zeolite, it didn't do very much. Well, they don't know very much about the charge. Look at the next line. It says clinoptilolite, which most of us have been using. It's only a 2.1 charge to draw in the toxic metal. Zeogold is a much stronger, almost 70% stronger charge. So you can see that this is a huge story. But in addition, we had to perfect the ability to virtually almost nanosize it so that from one equivalent of a sugar cube, we had to get a surface area about the same as an Olympic swimming pool. So this is sophisticated stuff. Now, if you're in Czechoslovakia and Poland, what do they say? They say Zeogold has a very clear cation exchange capacity. That's CEC. That's ability to tie up the bad stuff. And they conclude that the removal of heavy metals from water because of their toxic effect is extremely important. So read that again. If you believe that your body is 70% water, which is a pretty real, some people think a little more, and if you think that you don't have toxins in that water in your body, it's just because you haven't spent the money. Because if you take 20 tubes of blood and send it to the Mount Sinai School of Medicine, you will fail the test. Nobody we've ever tested is free of these things. The polybrominated diphenyl ether, PBDE, is the flame retardant that we put in every kid's pajamas and now the mattresses. And now it's on all the airplane seats. So no matter where you go, we make sure that you're loaded with PDDE, which is a carcinogen and kills thyroid function, which is why you have so many people with obesity and no energy. So there's an answer to these things. When I get people well, I use, as I said, BCI is my fail-safe and that stop heart attacks. And but the patient has to believe it, so you need to have them get a test. Now, the BioClip will tell them immediately if their arteries have lost the flexibility and compliance, like an old radiator hose or garden hose or rubber or your windshield wipers that are dead. If your patient's arteries are dead, they need to know it. So you buy a BioClip for a lousy $1,000. You can test them in 3 minutes, hook it into any computer, and it'll come out in 3 minutes with a report that tells them what their partial oxygen PO2 is, what their pulse rate was, and most importantly, what their vascular age is. Now let's take it. I'm 74. Mine didn't do too bad. I came out at 59. I have friends that were 50 years of age. We tested them. Their vascular age was 79. It's taken over 2 years to bring them back to a vascular age of 49, but we've made them 30 years younger in terms of compliance, flexibility, etc., of their vascular tissue. Is there any proof that this is meaningful? Royal Hospital of London did a 10-year study, and the people who do poorly on the vascular age test called the BioClip that you can buy and put in your office tomorrow, and you can become an expert at these things, they found that when you do poorly, that means you're significantly older on the test than your chronological age. You're a 50-year-old showing the blood vessel of a 60-year-old. 9 out of 10 were dead in 10 years. If you do very well, if you're 70-year-old and you come back, your vessels are only 60 years of age, you will be 9 out of 10 alive in 10 years. So this is a neat way, because it's good for you to know that we have real products at Longevity Plus, and I really spent millions of dollars learning all this, and I took my body and totally regenerated my heart, so I have a zero recording. You should try to have a zero test result, and we need to bring this new stuff out, because nobody needs angiograms, nobody needs bypass. It's all rip-off. The stent is just a joke. So who needs to detox? I hope, having heard this presentation and maybe playing the one last night, which we covered these slides quite differently, you may understand it. But on the website, Gordon Research, if somebody tells you EDTA doesn't work, I took from doctors who work with lead-poisoned people around the world and published papers that oral EDTA is clearly a very useful treatment. And yet people tell you, oh, no, it's a waste of money because it's only 5% absorbed. Well, wait a minute. The 95% that's not absorbed is in your intestine, and it's going to stop the free radical reactions going on in your intestine, which means you will not be wasting. Your intestine is what, about the size of a couple of tennis courts? And that surface is using up your glutathione, SOD, and catalase, and using all your body's natural antioxidants just to keep the war down so you don't get colon cancer, but it's still the third leading cause of death. So if you take EDTA, which is very cheap, I even have people, we bathe in EDTA now. We have it as the Beyond Clean, and I have it as gum for people who can't afford to get the mercury out of their mouth, because mercury will be tied to EDTA. Those big studies that I showed you here where the doctor said there's no mercury in the kid, by using the ability to knock down the infections with silver and the immune support and change the diet, etc., that kid was getting that mercury out using EDTA, which we don't use as the primary treatment. We do have heavy detox, DMSA, and I love it. And we do have zeolite, and if you have a lot of doubts, take all. But I just want to try to get an even playing field. So if you don't waste the body's glutathione's resources with a needless fight in the gut because you weren't smart enough to take the fiber in the EDTA and the ecstasy, if you can protect the gut, you won't have colon cancer, and you won't have depleted the body's levels of these very ideal antioxidants like glutathione. But lipoic acid, what we put in Zeogold, is the most expensive. It is the all liquid soluble, the all R form, but many people sell the all R and it tastes so bad they can't get it down and it's not stable. So we've tried to make something that really works, and when you learn about lipoic acid, you'll know why the Zeogold that Longevity Plus supplies you. The little bottle on the left is the Zeogold. Those are the pre-measured dosages. They look like a capsule. They're to be opened and put into 2 to 4 ounces of water. The one on the right is the homeopathic version. How do you start out when somebody is environmentally sensitive? You use the one on the right, because the whole bottle on the right has 100 milligrams. Each capsule on the left has 100 milligrams. So you start. So the patient says, oh, I can handle this, I'm handling it okay, because there will be some people who don't appreciate the rather large cleansing of having 3, 4, 5 bowel movements a day, as you can have when you're starting to work up to 3, 4, and I even have some people using 5 of the Zeogold a day, but they work to it slowly. So they've already started to change the biofilm, and I add the lumbrokinase to it, and I have them on the fiber and the rest of the things, but detoxification is a science today. And a lot of your patients, you can't get this across in a single visit. So feel free to look at however you can use the slides we have. We'd like to make these available to you any way that you can lecture, because the best trick is going to be that we have to give our patients enough information that they take and really stay on things like the Beyond Fiber, because there is nothing better than stabilized rice bran with octocosanol, gamma-ricinol, and has in it beta-cytosterol. When you learn, beta-cytosterol works almost like cholestyramine. You've heard about the autistic kids with all the toxins, the mycotoxins you use. Well, cholestyramine is expensive. Beta-cytosterol is virtually able to substitute wherever you would have used cholestyramine as in a child with a familial hypertriglyceridemia, etc. Remember, high-dose IV vitamin C, which we'll be teaching for a whole day at ACAM, is hydrogen peroxide. When you become an expert at that, hydrogen peroxide is a form of disinfectant. It cannot keep the water in your body disinfected for life, because that water will grow stuff again. So please understand why. We try to keep people on enough C that they keep the yellow color on the stick, and they take enough of the silver, so that we keep the body total load of microbes down, because if you go to all the meetings on mercury, you still haven't learned everything that there is to know about Lyme. And Lyme doesn't work very well with a lot of the tests, so let's just get our patients well. Now, this is just to remind you that you can have BASF has made a synthetic form of the zeolite that actually has even more of the little cages. They have 1,100 meters per gram, but that's synthetic and would not be usable for human use, but it's part of our space travel need. We have industrial application. Zeolite is so critical today as a filter that anyone telling you it doesn't work has simply got their head in the sand. And we know that one of the guaranteed things, as I pointed out, the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, pyre patches, etc., is going to work better and have a better immune system when you use zeolite, but you'll have better energy. And so the biofilm is a big part of our story, and there is the need to get rid of the biofilm because that's where all the critters seem to be trying to live. Fact Forum is some place that I would like to have you join so that we can continue to share information with each other about the exciting world of keeping our friends alive and stamping out needless stroke, heart attacks, and cancer. And I thank you very much for your attention, and we'll see if there's any questions that we can answer.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. If anybody has any questions, please press the little hand icon to the left of your control panel. At that time, we'll unmute you so that you can ask your question. If you don't have a microphone and you're not dialed into the conference, go ahead and type in your question on the question bar.
Meanwhile, one of the questions we had last night was somebody said they really need to know what is your answer to anybody that can't afford to die of a heart attack, and let's just talk cost. If it averages, say, $120 a month to take one package of BCI twice a day, that's going to be all a lot of people can afford. And you can protect yourself and say that Dr. Gordon would have added to your program either the endokinase or the Buluki. Buluki is a little more expensive, a little stronger. But everything is cost effective, and those things.
Oh, I unmuted him. I muted him.
If we look at cost effectiveness, adding some lumbokinase Buluki for at least a few months doubles the price to the patient, but it has provable benefits, because if you did nothing else but have a bottle of Buluki in everybody's home or a bottle of the endokinase, if somebody looks like they're having TIAs or going right into a real stroke. Remember, with a stroke or a heart attack, you can still rush to the hospital and get TPA. Tissue plasminogen activators, $3,000 a shot. Typical 200-pound male is going to need 2 shots, $6,000, and it doesn't work after a few hours. Always, you can even the day after see a huge benefit, and we've seen people get up and start walking even 3 days after a stroke when they were half paralyzed and wind up dissolving the clot. So these things that we're talking about are powerful tools. It just takes a lot of knowledge. I mean, I worked extensively with Karl Ransberger that developed the Wobenzyme, and we know that all the top teams after Germany and Russia always were staying on the Wobenzyme because their reported ankle injuries or injuries that would take them out of play were reduced by about 70%. And if they did get an injury, they immediately took another 30 or 40 tablets. With an auto accident in Germany, we often give you about 50 Wobenzyme because you virtually will stop the black and blue developing, because the iron chelation is going to trap the iron that is released when you're badly injured. So there's a lot of things. I don't see any more questions.
Dr. Gordon, there doesn't appear to be any more questions.
In that case, we're going to thank you all for your attendance. It's been my pleasure having a chance to share with you the exciting world of keeping your friends, your patients, and your loved ones, and yourself alive. Amazingly enough, I had a doctor friend visit me yesterday who's been a member of that FACT Forum, but never thought that he might need anything, and he took the BioClip test, and now, all of a sudden, he's really understanding that all of us may need some of this help. Thank you so much for your attendance today.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. I'd like to remind people that this webinar will be posted in the next couple of days on gordonresearch.com. Look for the tab that says presentations. Thank you so much.